What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Star Wars Explained. Today, I'm joined by the author of the Doctor Aphra audio drama, Sarah Kuhn. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I always like to kick off my interviews with a couple simple icebreaker questions. So, for a little context, my favorite Star Wars character is Big Starklighter, kind of an odd choice. So, I love asking people, who are your favorite, like, C or D list characters? Not a main character, but who's someone that you think you might be the biggest fan of in the world?
I have to tell you that with something like Star Wars, especially, I pretty much never assume I'm the biggest fan or the only fan. I feel like even the most obscure characters have legions of amazing fans. I don't know if I can think of like necessarily a favorite third or fourth tier character. I can tell you one that perhaps stuck in my mind a lot, and I'm sure I cannot say I'm the biggest fan of this character because I'm sure that someone has written a very extensive history, or maybe there's an oral history that exists somewhere. I don't know. I would love to read it. But when I was a kid, and I was a very sensitive child, and we watched Return of the Jedi over and over and over again. At the battle at the end, there is an Ewok that dies, right? Like there's that Ewok who doesn't get up, and then his friend is like kind of cooing over him, and they kind of hold on that moment for a while. And I was very traumatized by that. If you want me to be honest, I still kind of am. But I remember the reason this sticks in my memory also, besides the traumatized part, is that I was so upset by it that my mother said, "He didn't die, you see him again later." And so every time I watched it, and this was, we were still in the era of like VHS, so it was harder to sort of go back the way it is now. So every time it would be like, "Where is he? Like, tell me where he shows up later." And she would always be like, "Oh, you just missed him. You just missed him. He was just on. He's fine. He's he's celebrating at the end with all his friends." And that was probably one of my formative Star Wars experiences, just because my mom really didn't want me to be so traumatized by Ewok death.
I think that is a perfect answer. I've never heard that one before, so I don't know. You might be the top fan. Who knows?
Yeah.
To be clear, are you more connected to the one that died or the one that was like they linger on? And
I feel really bad for both of them, but I think I was more affected by the fact that the one just did not get up, because it was such a moment of triumph for so many of the Ewoks that it just seems hopelessly sad to me. And yeah, maybe someday, like in a one-shot comic or something, I could tell the hidden story of the Ewok who died, and maybe I could show how he actually got up later, making my mother's lie to me canon.
From a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi probably coming in like 2 years, so there's your chance. Well, you're definitely not alone. I remember turning to my dad and being like, "Why would they do that?" Just being a young kid, like I could not fathom that.
Yeah.
What was your introduction to Star Wars, and what was it about the universe that really spoke to you?
Oh, I mean, it was definitely a New Hope. And I do not remember exactly when I saw it. I do remember I was very young. My aunts were very into sci-fi and fantasy, so I feel like they probably had something to do with me seeing it for the first time. But yeah, I was just obsessed. I was very young, and I just loved the idea that there was sort of a bigger universe out there. I grew up in a really small town. I grew up in a really white town. I felt very like I really stood out. Like there were not many people like me around. And so I think the idea that there was a bigger universe out there, even one that was fictional, was very exciting. And, of course, I just really was obsessed with Princess Leia. I think that, especially for the time, that was the kind of woman character that I felt like I wasn't maybe seeing a lot of in the media that I enjoyed. And I really just thought she was so powerful and her story was so interesting. And yeah, I think it was just something like for a lot of us that it just took hold of my imagination, and that was it.
What's your favorite Star Wars story? Maybe a movie, maybe a book. It could be literally anything.
Oh my goodness. You're asking very hard questions.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's just, whenever someone asks me like, what are you reading right now? Or what's your favorite book? I'm always like, I have read no books and I don't remember any of them.
Right.
But Star Wars wise, I don't know. I feel like there are so many amazing stories in so many mediums. And I think one of the things that really captured me as a kid, especially since I was so just kind of insatiable for these kinds of stories, these kinds of escapes. It was just that, like, even then there was so much of it, like, which now that seems, like there maybe wasn't quite as much, because now there's like so many different things that you can purchase and consume, and so many great creators working on them. But I do remember my mind being blown by the fact that there were books, and that there were books that were, not things that were the stories that we saw on screen, or maybe went a little bit beyond them. I do remember reading the novelization of The Empire Strikes Back quite a bit, because I was really into the romance. The romance was like such a key central thing for me. And the fact that, like, in the book, it sort of got into more of, the internal monologue of Princess Leia and Han Solo and what they're feeling, like when they're kissing and stuff. I guess I was sort of, destined to be like a romance novelist, which is, what I am now, because I was so obsessed with that and I just wanted more of it. And so, I think for all the Star Wars stories, I was just so excited that there was more, and there was always kind of, an endless stream of things for me to consume.
Well, yeah, let's get into Dr. Aphra and some of your writing now, which is when this comes out, it'll be available on hardcover. So check that out. What is the best thing to you about writing a character that is as chaotic and messy as Aphra?
Oh, I mean, it really is just that. She is just having the best time. I've said that I feel like she may actually be having the most fun of anyone in Star Wars, because she just lives so unapologetically. She is not apologetic about who she is or what she's doing, even if maybe she feels a little bit bad about some of the things she's doing later. But I just, as a writer, I love that, you can't really predict her. You have to kind of just go with her and see what she does in the moment. And it's usually a terrible choice. And that's really fun to write. Someone who just grabs onto life like that with so much zest and enthusiasm. And then, the other thing that I think is fun as a writer is she has such a fun voice. That voice is so delightful to write in. It's so irreverent. I feel like it sounds like not a lot of other things in Star Wars. Like, I feel like she sounds like a very unique character in that universe. If you were just reading dialogue that was unattributed, I feel like you would know that it was her. And, that's definite, like, all credit to Kieran Gillen for creating that voice, because I feel like he just put her on the page and you sort of knew who that person was immediately, and you kind of can't take your eyes off of her. And so I think someone who has that level of chaos and charisma and just sheer enthusiasm and unpredictability is super, super fun to write.
Do you ever find it difficult to balance, like you said, where she makes a lot of bad decisions that she regrets later? How do you write someone who constantly makes bad decisions and hurts other people, but you still make them someone that you root for?
Well, I think, again, a lot of that is due to what Kieran had established, just that she's so charming. I mean, I think that, she charms the reader, but certainly she charms me as the writer when I'm working on her, when I'm writing in her voice. And so I think because a lot of writers, I think, feel like they get into the headspace of the character. I certainly feel that way, where I am able to separate fiction from reality for the most part. But there is something really just irresistible about the way that she describes things and the way that she moves through the world. And, I loved being in her headspace. So I think that for me, I just kind of felt like, well, I'm sort of embodying Aphra right now. So her decisions, perhaps unfortunately, totally make sense to me. They seem perfectly, logical by going by kind of what her version of logic is. So yeah, I actually, maybe that makes me like a bad person, or like I have maybe when I'm in that headspace, maybe not the best, moral compass, but I think when you are writing her, it just kind of makes sense. And because she is so charming and she does have this swagger and this bravado, I feel like she really sells all of her bad decisions, even to Darth Vader. Sometimes she really sells those bad decisions. So yeah, I think the sheer amount of fun that it is to write her, I guess, like, when those things come up, I don't really for whatever reason, I don't really question them as much.
Did you ever go too deep into her headspace? Did it start to affect your own behavior as you were out and about?
I mean, hopefully not. Maybe I should ask, some of my friends and colleagues, but I know. I mean, for the most part, I can have a pretty, healthy separation between myself and when I'm writing, kind of until we get to maybe the last couple weeks or so of deadline. Then it's anyone's guess. But then I'm also not out in the world very much, because I'm just at my desk writing. So no, I don't think she affected me, in my real life in a bad way. If anything, I feel like her sort of devil may care attitude towards things is perhaps something that I could adopt a little more. I am like a lot of writers. I am a control freak. I do like to, kind of have control of my environment and what's happening. And I think she just kind of gives in to, like, there's no control over anything. She thrives in that chaos. So perhaps I felt like maybe she even affected me a little bit in a good way.
I think that's a really interesting point, and something I had never considered. I'm the same way, very controlling, but maybe that's why I love the character so much, is exactly that. Just like, oh, I wish, if only. But
Yes.
one of the things that I love about all of the Aphra stories is just how, like you said, fun and weird that they can get with Star Wars. I feel like she gets almost free reign to do anything she wants and go anywhere in Star Wars. So how do you keep all of that really out there weirdness in balance with an actual very human story?
Well, for this, it was interesting because I was adapting one of the original stories from the comics, one of the first Darth Vader stories, which was Kieran and Salvador Larroca. And so I already had a framework, which was great. And it was sort of about finding, what is kind of underneath this. If we're writing this in this format, if we're writing this as a script, but it is told, from her POV, which was a decision we made really early on, me and my wonderful editor, Elizabeth Schaefer, and the audio producer, Nick Martorelli. We had that discussion of, like, what, okay, the comic at that point anyway was not Doctor Aphra, it was called Darth Vader. So it is obviously very centered on Darth Vader, but she is obviously such an electric, dynamic presence. How do we kind of tell this story, but in a way that's different, in a way that really centers her and is about, her take on things. And we really decided, and I certainly felt very strongly about this from the start, that it should be in her voice. It should be her telling this story. Like, you get the sense that she wouldn't want anyone else to do it. So when we had that, I went back and I read all the comics, and I read beyond them. You know, I reread, like, I tried to reread kind of everything that was centered on her, because it had been a little while since I had done that. And it was sort of about finding, like, what are the moments where we feel like she's thinking a certain thing? What is kind of the emotional through line? And for me, it was really about this great line that Kieran wrote for her that I always like say wrong, because I remember it so much for the comics, but then, like, I don't know, like I've done a lot of these interviews back to back, and so things just fall out of my head. But it's something like, you know, when she's talking to Darth Vader about, like, basically saying, like, I know you're going to kill me at some point, so here's how I would like you to do it. She says something like, the way I've lived, I know I'm lucky to be alive. And that really struck me. That sort of became the center of what I pitched, which was that she is such, you know, as we said, chaos personified. And she is reckless. It does seem sometimes like she has a death wish, or she doesn't, you know, she doesn't care, or she will always choose kind of the most dangerous thing and then just throw herself headfirst into it without thinking about the consequences. But I also thought that she clearly had this baked in survival, you know, the survival instinct. And I thought that really came through in the moment from the comics where Darth Vader is about to kill her, and she basically blackmails him with, you know, this information that she has about Luke that he's been looking for. And it's, again, like a very foolish decision. But I thought in that moment, it seemed like she was kind of realizing, like, I say all this stuff and I talk a big game and I act like I don't care, but I actually really want to live. And so those two things seemed very much in conflict to me, which again is really interesting as a writer. And so I wanted to play with that. I wanted to find, you know, what is that emotional through line? What does that look like? Because I think those elements are probably something that a lot of us can relate to, like, you know, sort of like these things that are in conflict within us or seem like they're in conflict, and these moments where we have these big realizations. And so I really wanted to bring that out, that sort of survival instinct that seems to be in conflict with her very reckless behavior.
When did you come up with the idea for the format? Because I think it really helps with some of these not disparaging, just different ideas that are at conflict within her, where she's basically narrating this story, and we get to see some things that she decides to delete from the story. We get a little extra peek into her head that the final person that the story is for won't get to see. How much fun was it to play with that kind of thing, and when did that idea come up?
All right, well, first I'll ask you, is it okay if I do, like, spoilers in this discussion? Like, do you feel like everyone would have read it, or would you rather I speak more vaguely?
I was going to leave that up to you. I've talked about the audio drama quite a bit on my channel, but since the hardcover is just coming out, I was gonna leave that up to you. Spoilers are fine if they're fine with you.
Yeah, let's. Okay, so I'll say, like, a little bit of well, it is kind of a spoiler, I guess, in this answer. And if you don't want to hear it, just, like, skip over this answer. I'll try to just, you know, mention it here and nowhere else. But I think what you are referring to as far as the format is something that was also in my original pitch, because you know, we had talked about on the first call we had with me and Elizabeth and Nick, like, okay, this isn't her voice, like, she is telling us this story. And so, of course, like, one of the first things I thought of was, who is she telling this story to? And isn't it fun that she's perhaps the most unreliable narrator we can think of? Like, we cannot believe anything she says, and that's part of the fun of it. So I, you know, again, had reread the comics, was thinking about this kind of underneath emotional through line, like what would bring that out? What are some moments here that we can expand upon? And, you know, again, like being so into romance, I was always a big fan of the relationship between her and Sana Staros. And I just thought it was so interesting that up until this point, a lot of times when we've seen them together, when we've seen them, you know, in the comics or whatever, they are so angry at each other. Like, it is obviously the aftermath of a very bad breakup, and they hate each other and they want to kill each other. And there's so much intense feeling and passion there that I was like, well, I wonder what they were like when they were kind of, you know, good together, because clearly there are some very deep emotions that are powering this. That must mean that their actual, you know, courtship was like on fire. Like, that must have been amazing. So I really wanted to write about that relationship and to kind of foreground it a little bit, and to maybe elaborate on it a little bit. You know, this is like kind of a chance when you're asked to write something like this, like, oh, what do I, as like a really big super fan, want to see? Like, what have I been missing? And I wanted to write about that relationship. And so when I was thinking about, you know, she has these things that are in conflict. She is, you know, chaos, but she also has the survival instinct. This is something she's kind of realizing during this adventure. I went to the moment later when Aphra is in Sunspot Prison and she sees Sana again, and it's very, very charged, again, lots of angry emotions. And I just thought, you know, again, like, obviously these are such powerful feelings. There is something there. There was something there that was very passionate, that was very intense. And so I thought, you know, I think one of the things that sometimes we think about when we realize, like, I actually want to live, I want to survive, like, reckless behavior aside, I actually do have this, you know, kind of baked in survival instinct. I think, like, one of the things maybe we kind of think of is this idea of regret. You know, what would I leave behind if I was not here anymore? And for Aphra, I just thought, you know, she does, even though she tries to hide it, she does have a heart. She does have feelings. She is, you know, she is a person. And I thought, like, I think one of the things that she would regret is how she treated Sana, how she left things with Sana, how she kind of made her feel like she didn't care, or that she could very easily walk away from this relationship. And that was a big regret I thought she would have. And so then, you know, we have that, we have the romance, we have the emotional through line. I was like, well, if she is narrating this, she's obviously narrating it to someone. So wouldn't it be interesting if it was actually a recording for Sana? It was something that she was doing to tell her, I do care about you, and the feelings that we had in the past were real. And if I didn't let you know that, that is something I would regret. So that, I felt like, gave us a lot of room to play with how she's telling the story, with the kind of unreliable narrator thing, with, you know, how she kind of starts it out. And it's almost like she wants you to think that she's recording this for, like, her legion of fans or something. Like, it's like, oh, you know, dear audience, like, dear listener. And then she kind of breaks down over the course of it and has to reveal who it is actually for, because she realizes, like, that's still kind of holding this person at a distance. That's still not really letting them know how I feel. So I really liked that idea, and luckily everyone else did too. And then Elizabeth, my editor, was really the person who pushed me to take advantage of the audio format, because with this narrator, she was like, you know, if she's the one who's making the recording, if she's the one who's in charge of the recording, she would probably try to manipulate it a lot, right? Like, she wants you to hear the most best, like, badass version of who she is. She wants that persona out there. It's not as much the real person until she kind of breaks down towards the end. So I thought that was just delightful that, you know, Aphra would rewind things and record over them and make things up and try to make herself sound amazing. The part in the beginning where she's like, oh, actually, at this point, I gave this amazing speech. I thought was really funny because I think, sometimes we do that. Like we're in an argument or something, and then the argument ends, and then 10 minutes later, we're like, oh, I just thought of the perfect comeback. Like, if only I could rewind time and go back and say it to that person. So that I thought really fit with the character. But that's kind of how we came up with, what is the actual format of this, and how can we utilize that to really show the character of Aphra.
Well, like you said, the audio drama is half adaptation and half new revelations. We fill in gaps from the Darth Vader and Star Wars comic, but we also have flashbacks. You may have just answered this, but what were you most excited to explore in Aphra's life when you were asked to write this? It may have been her history with Sauna, or was it something else?
Yeah, I definitely was excited to explore that. I mean, I think that is probably the majority of the 100% new content I added were those scenes between them. But yeah, I was really excited to explore that. I was also excited to, in particular, explore their days together at university, because I felt like that was something that has been kind of talked about and hinted at, and I just wanted to see more of it. I liked the idea of them, being in class together, or just having like cute dating adventures. I wanted to know like how they had their first kiss. And so, yeah, I kind of, that was probably the main thing I was really excited to explore more. And that I just had so much fun writing, and then just hearing the recording of it was so much fun. I really loved what they did with it.
Have you been able to keep up with the current run of Afrocomics at all by Alyssa Wong?
Yes, I love Alyssa Wong, and I think, yeah, I'm so excited that there's so much Aphra content right now. I think we could be perhaps in a bit of an Aphra renaissance. And we have actually talked about, we should be able to have like an Aphra con, like, especially since so much of the new Aphra stuff came out during a year when we could not have conventions. So yes, I am very excited about that. And I was also excited that she put a little nod to the audio drama in one of the recent issues.
Yes, the one that just came out. That's exactly what I was going to ask. If there was any collaborative process there,
because Alyssa actually, I think they had given her a draft of the full audio drama for just background, or like if she needed it or something, and she read it. And then when she was working on that issue, she messaged me and she was like, now this climbing wall, like, how did you imagine that it looks like what was kind of the thing here? And I didn't know exactly what she was writing. So I didn't know there was something that was going to appear later, but I was really excited that she put kind of a little nod in there, and I'm excited that she's also exploring some new, Aphra Sauna content.
Yeah, I definitely did like the point. Oh my God, it's the thing from the thing.
Yes.
Since the Darth Vader comic and her introduction there, have you noticed any ways that Aphra's characters evolved over time through the ongoing comics and your audio drama?
Well, I think like with any character, especially one that is this, wonderfully popular, I feel like with everything that's been written about her, it's just added more layers. And it's always fun to see that. I felt very fortunate that I had a lot of material to kind of go to for background and research and all of that. But yeah, I think I feel like she's just gotten more layers. I think that when Kieran and Salvador introduced her, like, it was so visceral. You really just could not take your eyes off of her, or at least I couldn't. Like, I just really wanted to know everything about her, and what kind of made her tick. What was all this chaos? Like, who is this person? She was really like no one I had ever seen in Star Wars. And so I feel like as she's continued, hopefully all of us who have been lucky enough to work on her have added new layers and new dimensions. And a lot of it, I think, is just picking up on things that were already there, you know, when she was first established, taking those little threads and pulling on them. But yeah, I hope that there's a lot more Aphra in our future, I hope. And I look forward to seeing what new things get added to her next.
Well, for her future, do you think there is any hope for her to ever become less of a mess, or are we going to get to, from a certain point of view, The Force Awakens, and she's just still as chaotic and running around the galaxy and causing messes?
I mean, you know, I kind of, as a writer, I feel like her mess is really her, like, a lot of her appeal. Like, I think that's a feature, not a bug. And I do like that in some of the more recent comics, we have seen that she is still chaotic. She is still kind of a mess, but she does at least know that perhaps sometimes she should let people in her life who are important know that she cares about them. You know, like she should let people know that, like, you know, I might have done X for a reason. It might have seemed really crappy, but I really do care about people. And, you know, again, I don't want people to not know that. Like, if I never see someone again, I don't want them to not know that. So, yeah, I think that, like, as far as her bravado, her kind of daring, her recklessness, I do kind of hope she keeps that, just because I think that is part of her having, you know, the best time of anyone in the galaxy. But I like the layers that have come out with, you know, her actually being willing to be vulnerable with people once in a while, even if she'll deny it later. Her actually admitting that she cares about people sometimes, even if she's better doing it, like, with a recording than to their actual face. So yeah, I think she can evolve, but I think she can also still keep that core of chaos, hopefully.
Well, I have one more question for you. It's kind of a goofy one, just because as I was doing some research for this interview, I discovered that you used to be a journalist and you said you didn't like writing headlines. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot, but if you got to interview Aphra, what do you think your headline would be for that story?
Well, it would depend on the publication and, you know, how clickbaity we're getting. You know, like,
this is YouTube. Go clickbaity, I think.
If it was like super clickbaity, it would be, you know, it would be like 10 things you didn't know about Dr. Aphra, 10 explosive secrets about Dr. Aphra. If it was like a supermarket type tabloid, it would be like just one or two words, like really big with an exclamation point. Like, maybe it would just be disaster, you know, or chaos disaster, like something that indicates, like, oh, this person is in trouble, like they're cruising for a scandal. So yeah, like much as Aphra has many chaotic dimensions, I feel like there are many chaotic headlines that could also be applied to her.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about Aphra with us. Where can people find you online, and maybe pitch some of your other stories, your non-Star Wars stories, to Star Wars fans? What do you think would appeal to them about everything else you've written?
Sure. So you can find me a lot of the times on Twitter. I'm there, you know, usually when I'm supposed to be doing something else. I'm just Sarah Kuhn. It's just my name. On Instagram, I'm Sarah Kuhn Books, because someone took Sarah Kuhn. I don't know why. And I also have a website that is just heroinecomplex.com. That's heroin, like superheroine, like the drug. And I am sure that website needs to be updated multiple times, but I will tell you where it is anyway. And as far as my other work, you know, I believe, and I think Elizabeth has said this, that I was hired to do this, that I was thought of for this project because of my series Heroine Complex, which is a contemporary fantasy / paranormal romance series about Asian American superheroines in San Francisco. They are very ridiculous. They're also very chaotic. I think they try to make some better decisions than Aphra sometimes. But yeah, that's the Heroine Complex series, and they fight things like demonic cupcakes and, you know, supernatural karaoke and real life bridezillas. And it is 4 books, and there's a 5th one coming out later this year. And then I also have a YA rom-com coming out this year that has no space or superheroes or anything. It's you know, mostly people being really cute, and that one is called From Little Tokyo with Love, and it's about a girl who is growing up in Los Angeles's beautiful little Tokyo neighborhood and does not believe in fairy tales or happy endings. And spoiler alert, there's some things that happen that may convince her otherwise. But as far as a Star Wars connection, you know, that I think is if you are a big shipper, you know, there's a lot of romance, or if you just like the idea of escape into kind of magical worlds, because the LA in this book is kind of like, you know, a magical fairyland. I kind of wanted to pay tribute to my home, because I love LA very much and think it gets a bad rap a lot of the times. So and there's, I guess, some exploring, like, you know, like Aphra does a lot of exploring. So yeah, those are some things that I have that are not Star Wars, but that may have some appeal for Star Wars folks if you like certain elements of the Aphra audiobook.
Well, there you go. The Aphra audiobook and hardcover are out right now, so you can check those out. Or if you've already done that, check out Heroine Complex. That sounds very much like Aphra. But thank you again so much, Sarah, for joining us. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.
Thank you.